I wanted to direct All My Sons because it is an American classic. It was written in the 40s when Miller was actually inspired by a real event that happened when some people conspired to ship out defective parts, and perhaps lives would have been lost. This morally outraged Miller, and he wrote this play, which was fortunate for us because he really had not had commercial success up to that point, and he was about to give up on his writing career. But Miller was a man of very strong moral principle. That's quite evident in this play. It has a strong, clear moral imperative in it. And this was partially reflected in his view of his criticism of the American dream. It's strongly expressed in a beautiful speech by the son of the play. That, along with his left-wing viewpoint, was really the reason that Miller was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee, where he refused to name names of communist sympathizers, unlike some of his compatriots. He was a man of strong moral conviction and the courage to stand by his values. I think you have to admire that. In addition, this is a terrific story, peopled by wonderful, complex characters that we can all identify with. And it's a story about values that are just as relevant today as they were in the 1940s. All My Sons does follow the form of the classic Greek tragedy in that it has a protagonist with a fatal flaw. The Greeks used kings and leaders to represent the whole of the people. Miller and most modern playwrights use the everyday man, the everyday Joe, if you will. He acts badly because he is fearful and afraid, lacks the courage to do the right thing, and also because he puts the protection of his immediate family above the needs of society as a whole. This brings him down in the end, and in the form of Greek tragedy, moral balance has to be restored to the world, which it is in this play when Joe Keller commits suicide, and that act frees his son to go on living into the future without guilt. All My Son retains its relevance today because we have parallel situations going on all the time. We certainly have many, many examples of corporations, businesses, government, which is all people, doing the wrong thing that may hurt the public good because of their own need for greed, expediency, lack of accountability. This is true in medicine, it's true in government, it's true in so many ways. Unfortunately, though we are still very angry when we discover these things, I tend to believe that we are no longer as shocked as we used to believe. Communication is so much more relevant. I mean, my own views have changed because of my maturity and my life experience, but I think that society has also lost a great deal of its naivety and perhaps its idealism. First and foremost, I want to find actors who are fully committed to giving this their all, to taking on a professional attitude toward the craft and the art that we will be doing. I want actors who convince me of their character's viewpoint and who elicit my sympathy for their character's pain and needs and desires. I'll be looking for actors who, in the audition process, are able to be in the here and now, really listening to the other person that they are auditioning with and responding honestly to what they're being given. My advice, first and foremost, is to read the play before you come to auditions. Be familiar with what Miller is trying to say. Be familiar with the character that you're most interested in auditioning for. What are his or her needs? What do they want? What are their flaws? And bring that to the table. Show me with conviction what your point of view is about this character. And then that said, be willing to listen to me, be willing to try some different things if I ask you to. I often do that in auditions to see how flexible people are, how well they take direction, and also to see if I can mold them a bit into the form that I had envisioned for this character. However, they may have a better idea than I had originally, and they may turn me on to some new thoughts and concepts that I might be really excited about and decide to go with. I like to act myself as much as I like to direct, so I think that I bring the tools I use as an actress in my work trying to help other actors develop their characters. I think we all have to draw on our own personal experiences to come up with some of the emotions and reactions that our character would have, especially during the rehearsal process. But once you get to the really the acting process on stage, by that time I expect actors to have developed their own backstory, their own character's history that they will draw upon to motivate the things that their character is doing in the play. The first thing that strikes me when a person is reading in an audition is how natural does he or she sound. If it sounds like recitation, like reading, it's not going to go over. You have to make it sound real. And in so doing, I would strongly advise people to really listen to the other actor, engage in that conversation, and you're going to come out a lot more natural. I think I'm going to be starting this rehearsal process with a few table reads where we can really discuss what Miller was trying to say, what he's trying to do, and how every single character in this play works to form that whole and propel that story forward. Within the rehearsal process, I hope to engage people in building their characters by presenting them with questions that they are to come back at every rehearsal and speak in their character's voice in answer to my question. It's a kind of improvisation, although we probably won't have time to play out scenes, but for example, what were you thinking on the day you heard that your son had gone missing? You know, describe that day. What was it like? Give me as many details as you can, and how did you feel? And I think doing that process will really help people to develop and flesh out their characters. And I hope I have actors who can learn their lines quickly enough that we have the time to do that kind of creative exploration. I think it could be a challenge not to villainize any of the characters. What Joe Keller does in this play is a terrible thing, but he does not do it out of a desire to actually hurt anyone. He does it because he's afraid, because he's panicking, and mostly because he is putting the needs of his family above the needs of society. But I want people in the audience to be able to identify with Joe. What would I do in a similar kind of situation? How would I act? How courageous could I be in keeping to a moral stand? Of course, number one, I hope the audience will enjoy the evening because it will be a good production. But I hope also that they will be stimulated to have intelligent thoughts and conversation about what are our values and how do we live a morally responsible life. My favorite part of directing is helping the actors. As I said, I'm an actor myself. I love that process, and I think because of my years of experience with that, I really have something to give to other actors in helping them find and develop their characters. That is by far my greatest joy in directing. My least favorite part of directing is getting actors to learn their lines in a timely fashion. I hate spoon-feeding lines to actors. I feel that's their job. They need to be doing it on their own, because when they get to rehearsal, I want to have the freedom to really help them develop their roles, not to learn their lines. That is something they can do on their own, and I hope they will do it in a very timely fashion so we can really get on to the fun stuff.